There's nothing the UK loves more than Australian exports, neighbours, Kylie, and of course, Conservative political strategists.
Conservative political strategist.
Linton Crosby is the Australian strategist who steered the coalition to victory in the 90s and early 2000s. And in 2015 was credited with helping the British Conservatives, then thought to be on course for a big loss, win re-election.
Thank you.
He's a long-time ally of their current PM.
I think he's a fantastically positive guy and did a wonderful job for me.
The man who, mired in scandal, is again turning to the mastermind the UK press has dubbed the Wizard of Oz.
There's certainly a lot of transfer of personnel between British and Australian politics, particularly on the right of politics, and they look to each other's experience quite closely.
But Britain is keen on more than just election strategy. The government recently signing a deal for Rwanda to process and house asylum seekers, with Boris long clear on his inspiration.
We're going to have an Australian-style, points-based system that will allow us to control who comes in.
But our recent election might suggest a shift, that voters have different priorities, and Labor's victory here did not go unnoticed.
A positive campaign by Australian Labor ends almost a decade of stale Conservative rule. You showed that Australia deserves better.
That's a tweet from UK Labor leader Sir Keir Starmer, who's hoping to beat Boris Johnson when he goes up against him in just a few short years.
Johnson is up against a fairly, up to now, anonymous leader, but when we look at the success of Anthony Albanese, we think maybe that's not the electoral liability that it was in the past.
Our new PM certainly had the mother country on his mind when he quoted the lyrics of British musician and activist Billy Bragg, who claims he's besties with the new PM.
Just because you're going forward doesn't mean I'm going backwards. It's a good song.
And Bragg took note, posting to Facebook,
People have given him a mandate for change, to create a new Australia committed to acting collectively in the common good. I know Albo is the right person for the job.
So, can UK Labor deliver the same upset as their Aussie brethren, or are our countries just too different?
Well, I'm thrilled to say joining us now from London is Billy Bragg.
Hi, folks.
Thanks for joining us, Billy. Now, first question, are you really mates with our Albo, or are you just saying that now that he's PM?
No, it's true. I was mates with him for years and years. Really, I think it's back in the 1980s. I did something with the British Labour Party called Red Wedge. And I think young Albo was quite attuned to that. And over the years, as I've come to Australia, he's kind of turned up at gigs. I've met him backstage, formerly in the sort of like the late 90s. And since then, on and off, when I've come over, he's done a few things with me. I did a live chat Q&A with him at Fairgrounds Festival last time I was over in 2018, down at Bury. And yeah, I've always got on with him.
Name a more iconic duo, I'll wait. Now, you said he has a socialism of the heart, which of course is a lyric from one of your songs. In today's political environment, is that the kind of press he needs?
I think so, yeah, because when I'm talking about socialism of the heart, I'm talking about that as opposed to socialism of the head, which is an ideological politics that doesn't broke any questioning. And I think you've had a kind of ideological politics in Australia for the last few years under the previous incumbent. And I think what people in Australia seem to be looking for is something a little bit more compassionate. And that's what socialism of the heart is. It's the politics of compassion.
It's not just you that's been talking about the results of the Australian election. There's been a bit of commentary from the UK. Why is anyone there, we know you've got a lot going on, paying attention to Aussie politics?
Well, there's always been a huge similarity with politics in Australia, which has been handy for me because when I travel around the world singing about what I sing about unions and miners, I have to spend a lot of time explaining it to the Americans. But in Australia, I've always exactly kind of connected there. So I suppose we look at what's happening there, the similarities that you have, a leader who was relying, the Prime Minister who was relying on, should we say, wedge issues and culture war issues. Also, obviously, the Murdoch press is very similar in its role in your politics and our politics. So we look closely at what's happening there in the hope that, we might have the same kind of change. Because it's absolutely clear that the Australian people want change. That's whatever kind of change they want, we'll find out. But it's absolutely clear from the result that's what they want. And we're hoping the same kind of thing here.
Billy, we've heard recently, just as we go to air, that Boris Johnson's going to face a no-confidence motion probably tomorrow. Does he survive the week in the Billy Bragg world?
Hopefully not, but even if he does, Theresa May survived a no confidence vote 6 months before she had to resign. And the big thing is going to be the numbers. Depends how many people back him up. And at the moment, after the weekend he's had being booed at the Jubilee, I think people are beginning to realise he's not the vote winner they thought he was.
I'm sure a lot of Aussies watching everything that's going on in the UK, obviously pretty distracted by the big party around the Royals. But what's Boris done that means he might have to go? Didn't he just turn out to a couple of quiet office parties?
He turned out to a few quiet office parties while the rest of us were staying in our homes. And some people missed things much more important than parties, such as the birth of a child or the loss of a relative, weren't able to be with their relatives when they were passing away, weren't able to hug people. I mean, you know, we went through that together. You know, it's something that we all tried to do our part in, and to find that in number 10 they were flagrantly disobeying the rules, I think that's the killer for him.
It's a staggering lack of judgment. Excuse Hamish, you obviously flattered many a rule during lockdown.
Clearly.
I just wonder whether you lose your job over it.
I think you would.
I think
he's about to.
Well, you would have if you'd been out partying when you weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase we have over here, which is the optics. How does it look? It looks one rule for us and another rule for the Prime Minister. And that's a really bad look for a Prime Minister, particularly one who relies on his kind of like a popularity with the ordinary people. You know, the people who put him into power, the so-called Red Wall in the north of England, are working class voters who have pretty traditional values, and they don't take it lightly to feel that they're being taken as suckers. I mean, that's what it really looks like.
Yeah, we call it doesn't pass the pub test, and it just didn't.
But isn't that the thing with Boris, that he's always sort of been a bit of a hot mess and he kind of got away?
If I hadn't been able to go to the birth of a child or go to a funeral of a relative, as Billy's just said, because I was locked up and he's off sculling pints in number 10, give me a break.
Last few moments with your old mum, you know, and you couldn't go to the hospital. I mean, this is really serious, life-changing stuff. And to think that those photographs of him raising a glass, it just sticks in people's craw. Even the Conservatives. I mean, it's not just those of us who oppose him and his policies. The Conservatives want rid of him. The only real problem is there's no one there to replace him. That's what makes the Tory MPs really nervous about getting rid of him.
We know that you hung out with Anthony Albanese at the beautiful Enmore Theatre at a concert, but we also found this footage from Glastonbury in 2000, Billy. Take a look.
A feast of humbug and hypocrisy in which lefties like Billy Bragg pretend they're doing it for the good. When Boris says the words humbug and being hypocrisy, they are doing it switch off money. These people he's gone off the deep end. He's far off the deep end.
I mean, don't you just hate YouTube, Billy? That's you, you and Boris Johnson.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what, I thought that was a magic mushroom trip. I had no idea. When I saw the footage, I thought, oh, my God. I really did do that. I thought it was a Glasgow nightmare. Now, I'll tell you what happened. I mean, in my defence, he was the harmless editor of The Spectator back then, OK? Had I known, it was, you know, it's one of those things the BBC says to you, we're going to take Boris Johnson to Glastonbury, we need someone to take him round. I'm like, yeah, come on in, I'll take him. But yeah, I mean, you know, the YouTube never lies. What can you do? What can I say, you know?
So you can guarantee there's no footage of you and Donald Trump at Splendour in the Grass or anything like that?
No. Not to my knowledge. That's a dreadful thought.
OK.
Billy Bragg's One Step Forward, Two Steps Back tour will be coming to Australia in March and April of next year. Thanks so much for joining us, Billy.
Thanks very much, folks. Hope to see you then.